money that they've spent. Take another look and take some time for him. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for him. Well, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, it's time for hemp. Throughout Earth's history, hemp has been used, no mystery. Hemp was legal to pay your taxes for more than a century. Check your faxes, the founding fathers make sense to me. It's time to grow hemp legally. It's time for him. Sustainable green industry, that's our intent. A better place this world will be, it's time for him. Fuel and food and clothes and soap, housing, cars, yeah, condo Joe. Henry Ford built a car out of hemp, it's time for us to do it again. People be employed with balanced farming as it's meant. Right now, it's time hemp. Hemp is a true necessity for the wealth and protection of this country. Thomas Jefferson spoke those words, he knew the value of these herds. It's time to lift the hemp ban. It's time to make a strong stand. Yes, we can. I know we can. We can make a difference. Yes, we can. Just like birds of a feather, we can work together and lift the hemp ban. That they've spent. Take another look and take some time for him. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes, time for him.
Yes, it is. It is time for Hemp. I am your host, Casper Leitch, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the big broadcast today. We got quite an interesting show to share with you today. There's some changes going on in the state of Texas beginning March 31st that we're going to put a spotlight on. And we've got some things happening on the national level that might be of interest to you. And I've also got a friend stopping by today who's going to be talking about the failures of prohibition. As always, I want to put some music into your ears because music about cannabis is always enjoyable to listen to. And it's written by me, sung by the Illusions of Music. If you like the music that you hear on the big broadcast, just remember you can go to timeforhemp.news and download it for free and add it to your playlist and share it with your friends. Well, this first tune that we're going to listen to is One of my favorites, and I hope it becomes one of yours, is called Whispers of Hope, here at Time for Hemp.
Fields of green grow wild and free. Whispers of hope in every tree. Gold in the fiber, strong and true. Hemp holds a magic we never knew. Roots run deep where the sun will shine. Leaves so bold, breaking through the line. It's not just a plant, it's a beating heart, giving us strength to make a fresh start. And high, let's rise and soar. A brighter future knocking at our door. Grab the world in threads of gold. Hemp's the story waiting to be told. Making dreams from its endless strands. Bricks and oil shaped by human hands. It fuels our fire, gives power to heal. Feels so alive, it's the real deal, yeah. Here comes the wind, it's blowing our way. Hemp in the air, it's a brand new day. Up we climb on this endless rope. Hemp keeps weaving a world full of hope. High, let's rise and soar. Yeah. A brighter future knocking at our door. Yeah. Yeah. Wrap the world in threads of gold. Hemp's the story waiting to be told.
The Texas THC ban. What's really happening? If you've been following the news lately, you've probably heard about the March 31st, 2026 ban on smokable hemp product that Texas voted into state law. And if you're confused about what that means, you're not alone. I've been in this industry for decades, long before hemp was legal, long before CBD was a household word, and long before lawmakers even knew what THCA was. And I can tell you this, what's happening right now is one of the most dramatic shifts we've seen since Texas legalized hemp back in 2019. So let me break this down in plain English, because the people who wrote these rules sure didn't. On March 31st, 2026, the state of Texas effectively wipes out every natural smokable hemp product on the market. I'm talking about THCA flower, pre-rolled joints, loose buds, all the products that make up half or more of the inventory in many shops across the state. These are the products that kept small businesses alive. These are the products that help veterans sleep, that help cancer patients eat, that help people manage pain without opioids. And in a twinkle of an eye, they're gone and no longer allowed back on the store shelf. The state isn't calling it a ban. Instead, the state is calling it regulation. But let me tell you, as someone who has read every line of these new rules, this is a ban dressed up in a lab coat. Here's how they did it. Texas is changing the way it measures THC. Instead of measuring just Delta 9 THC, the compound that defines legal hemp, the state will now measure total THC, including THCA, the compound that turns into Delta 9 when you heat it. And guess what? Almost every smokable hemp product on the market goes over the 0.3% limit once you include THCA. That means it's suddenly illegal, even though it was perfectly legal up until March 31st, 2026. This is the state closing what they call a loophole. But let's be honest, it wasn't a loophole, it was the law. The legislature wrote it, the governor signed it, the industry followed it, and now because lawmakers didn't like the results, they rewrote the rules to get the outcome they wanted all along. And it doesn't stop there. The state is also jacking up licensing fees in a way that will crush small businesses. If you're a manufacturer, your annual fee is going from $258 to $10,000. If you're a retailer, your registration is going from $155 to $5,000. That's not regulation. That's a velvet-gloved eviction notice. Shop owners in rural Texas are terrified. They don't have $5,000 lying around. They don't have the staff to handle the new record-keeping requirements. They don't have the money to redesign packaging, redo labels, and pay for new lab tests. These are mom-and-pop shops. These are veterans. These are single parents. These are people who followed the law, invested their savings, and built something real, only to have the state pull the rug out from under them. And here's the kicker. Possession is still legal. If you're a consumer, you can still possess smokable hemp. You can still smoke it. You can still enjoy it. You just can't buy it in Texas anymore. So what do you think is going to happen? People are going to buy it online. People are going to buy it from out of state. People are going to buy it from the guy down the street who doesn't care about lab tests or age verification or child-proof packaging. The state is handing half the legal market to the illicit market, and they're doing it in the name of safety. Now let's talk about the reason the state says it's doing this. They point to an increase in poison control calls involving children. It's true that those numbers went up after hemp was legalized, but here's what they don't tell you. That happens with every newly legal product. It happened with laundry pods. It happened with e-cigarettes. It happened with cannabis in every state that legalized it, and those numbers have already started to drop again. They also point to teenagers using vape pens, which is a real issue. But instead of enforcing age restrictions, instead of cracking down on bad actors, instead of funding education, the state decided to punish the entire industry, including the businesses that were doing everything right. And let's not forget the politics behind this. Last year, the legislature tried to ban smokable hemp outright. The governor vetoed it, not because he supported the industry, but because he wanted the agencies to do the dirty work instead. And that's exactly what happened. The Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission and the Department of State Health Services wrote rules that accomplished the same ban the legislature couldn't pass. Now, as someone who has spent nearly 40 years fighting for cannabis reform, I can tell you this. The people who wrote these rules do not understand this industry. They don't understand the science. They don't understand the economics. And they definitely don't understand the consumers. Because here's the truth. People want to smoke. They always have. They always will. And when you take away safe, regulated, lab-tested products, people don't stop smoking. They just stop buying from legal stores. And that's where the real danger comes in. When you push people to the illicit market, you lose control. You lose testing. You lose age verification. You lose accountability. You lose the very safety you claim to be protecting. One thing is for sure, Texans are resourceful. They will find workarounds. They will buy semi-synthetic cannabinoids. They will buy converted products. They will buy edibles and beverages. They will buy whatever the law allows or whatever appears to comply with the law. That's not safer. That's riskier. So what happens next? The industry is gearing up to sue, and they should. These rules are an overreach. They're economically destructive. They're scientifically flawed, and they're legally questionable. This fight started back in 2021 with Delta 8, and it's not over. The Texas Supreme Court is still weighing that case. and now we're heading into another round. But here's what I want every listener to understand. This isn't just about hemp. This isn't just about THC. This is about whether Texas believes in small businesses. This is about whether Texas believes in science. This is about whether Texas believes in personal freedom. Because if the state can take a legal product used safely by millions of adults and ban it through a regulatory back door, what else can they do? I've been in this fight for nearly 40 years. I've seen the fear, I've seen the misinformation, I've seen the politics, but I've also seen the truth win out. And the truth is this: cannabis is not the enemy. Hemp is not the enemy. Small businesses are not the enemy. The enemy is ignorance. The enemy is fear. The enemy is policy made in panic instead of policy made in reality. It's now more important than ever that you stay informed. Even more important that you support your local smoke shops. This fight isn't over, not by a long shot. If there's one thing I've learned in my vast number of years as an activist, it's this: when people stand together, when they refuse to be pushed aside, when they demand fairness and science and common sense, change happens.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, yeah. There's a whisper in the headlines floating on the breeze, talking about a change in how we treat these little leaves. And the hemp folks in the heartland feel the shaking ground, 'cause a tiny rule in Congress could turn everything around. But the farmers keep on planting like they always do, fields of green ambition growing wide beneath the blue. They've been dancing with the laws that twist and bend and sway, hoping this new moment brings a brighter kind of day. We got roots for tomorrow, growing strong through the sorrow. Every seed is a promise that the future will borrow. Let the daylight get clearer, let the old fears grow narrower, 'cause the hemp fields are singing. We're the roots for tomorrow. All the business folks are counting every cost they pay, 'cause the tax code hits them harder in a lopsided way. Paying extra just for doing everything by law, dreaming of a fairer world each time they see a flaw. And the scientists are waiting with their notebooks out, hoping access to the plan will match what they're about. Jumping through the hoops that make the research slow and thin, ready for the moment when the real work can begin. We got roots for tomorrow, growing strong through the sorrow. Every seed is a promise that the future will borrow. Let the daylight be clearer, let the old fears grow narrower, 'cause the hemp fields are singing. We're the roots for tomorrow. There's a tug of war in Congress over what's allowed, and the hemp crowd's watching closely from the middle of the crowd. They're the cousins of the cannabis the headlines chase each night, hoping common sense will finally get the story right. So the growers and the dreamers keep their steady pace, 'cause the future of the fiber still depends on how we trace what is fair, what is useful, what is free, and what is true. Planting hope like music in a brand new point of view. We got roots for tomorrow, growing strong through the sorrow. Every seed is a promise that the future will borrow. Let the daylight get clearer, let the old fears grow narrower, 'cause the hemp fields are singing. We're the roots for tomorrow. We're the roots for tomorrow.
I want to take a few minutes to talk about the DEA rescheduling of cannabis. For more than 3 decades, I've watched the federal government dance around the truth about cannabis. I've watched politicians promise reform, agencies stall reform, and millions of Americans pay the price for a policy that everyone knows is broken. And here we are in 2026, finally closer than ever to meaningful change, but still stuck in a strange limbo where the headlines say one thing and the law says another. So let's talk plainly about where things really stand with the DEA's proposal to move cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. Because if you've been confused by the news, you're not alone. And if you've heard people say it's done or it's legal now, let me tell you, that is absolutely not the case. Here's the truth. Cannabis is still a Schedule 1 substance under federal law, and the only place that matters for that determination is the Federal Register, and it currently shows no final rule in the rescheduling of cannabis. That doesn't mean nothing is happening. In fact, more has happened in the last 2 years than in the previous 50. Back in May of 2024, the Department of Justice published a proposed rule to move cannabis to Schedule 3. That was historic. It was the first time the federal government formally acknowledged that cannabis has medical value, something patients, doctors, and researchers have been saying for decades. Then, in August of 2024, the DEA published a notice of hearing. That was another required step, and by late 2025, the public comment period had closed with more than 40,000 comments submitted. That's a level of civic engagement most federal agencies can only dream of. So yes, the process is real. Yes, it's moving. And yes, it's the closest we've ever been to ending the scientific and moral absurdity of calling cannabis a Schedule 1 drug. But, and this is the part people don't like to hear, a proposed rule is not a final rule. A hearing notice is not a final rule. A press release is not a final rule. A presidential video on social media is not a final rule. Until the DEA publishes a final rule in the Federal Register, cannabis remains Schedule 1. And that means 280E is still in effect. And this means that cannabis businesses still can't deduct normal business expenses off of their taxes. Banking restrictions are still in place. This means that most operators still can't access traditional financial services. Insurance and contracts remain conservative. This means that since the federal classification hasn't changed, compliance expectations remain exactly the same. In other words, the business environment hasn't changed yet, and anyone planning as if it has is setting themselves up for trouble. Now let me shift gears for a moment, because while the legal status hasn't changed, the cultural and political landscape absolutely has. When the Attorney General submitted the proposed rule in 2024, President Biden publicly praised it, calling the old approach to cannabis a failure that cost far too many lives. That was a major moment, not because of the politics, but because it signaled a federal acknowledgement that prohibition has done more harm than good. And even though the rule isn't final, the ripple effects are already being felt. Several states, including Florida, South Carolina, and Kentucky, have seen renewed momentum for legalization. Legislators who once hid behind federal law are now saying, well, if the DEA is moving it to Schedule 3, maybe it's time we modernize our own laws. That's a big shift. Meanwhile, in states where cannabis is already legal, operators are cautiously optimistic. Fixing 280E alone could be a huge benefit to cannabis business owners. Some businesses have been paying effective tax rates of 60, 70, even 80% because of 280E. Removing that burden would be transformative, but none of that relief arrives until the final rule is published. And even then, rescheduling is not legalization. It doesn't create interstate commerce. It doesn't erase criminal records. It doesn't fix decades of harm. It doesn't automatically open the banking system unless Congress follows through. What it does do is acknowledge the reality that cannabis has medical value, and the Schedule 1 classification was never scientifically defensible. It also opens the door to better research. For decades, scientists have been forced to jump through hoops to study cannabis, hoops they don't face when studying far more dangerous substances. Moving to Schedule 3 would finally allow real research into therapeutic strains, into the many different cannabinoids, and into the different delivery methods. This is long overdue. And perhaps most importantly, rescheduling signals something deeper, that the federal government is no longer pretending that cannabis is a public enemy. The question is no longer if federal policy will change. The question now is how fast. So where does that leave us right now? It leaves us in a moment of transition, a moment where the old system is cracking, but the new system isn't built yet. A moment where businesses need to plan conservatively, but advocates need to push aggressively. A moment where the public is ahead of the politicians and the politicians are ahead of the bureaucracy. And if you've spent over 35 years working in this movement like I have, you know that this is what progress looks like. Slow, messy, frustrating, but real. So here's my message. Stay informed, stay engaged, and don't let anyone, be it a politician, pundit, or headline writer, tell you the job is done. Because it isn't. But for the first time in a long time, the finish line is finally in sight. And when the day comes that cannabis is no longer treated like heroin under federal law, it won't be because the government suddenly woke up. It'll be because the millions of people, patients, veterans, scientists, business owners, and everyday citizens all refuse to accept a lie. And that's the road we're still walking. I'm asking that you walk this road with us. And please bring your friends.
I've been driving down these back road nights, looking hard for a little relief. Got some friends who are hurting bad, and the law treats mercy like a thief. There's a man who whispers, keep it low, says he's got what helps if I can pay. Funny how the safest thing I've found is the one place I can't go by day. Dangerous medication, not belief, but the way we get it. Turning good hearts into outlaws just to ease a little pain. Dangerous situation, but the truth is we won't forget it. 'Cause the risk is in the road, not the cure we're trying to gain. I've seen grandmas clutching paper bags, praying that no one asks what's inside. When the law makes kindness contraband, even gentle souls in fear must hide. There's a veteran leaning on his cane, says the pills they gave him make him numb, but a little green flower brings him back. Still he's scared of where it's coming from. Dangerous medication, not belief, but the way we get it. Turning good hearts into outlaws just to ease a little pain. Dangerous situation, oh, but the truth is we won't forget it. 'Cause the risk is in the road, not the cure we're trying to gain. If compassion had a rightful lane, we'd be walking in the bright midday. But the underground is only ground where the sick still have to find their way. So I'll keep driving through the quiet dark till the world wakes up and sees the cause. No one should gamble with their freedom just to heal what they already lost. Dangerous medication, not the leaf, but the way we get it. Turning good hearts into outlaws just to ease a little pain. Dangerous
You are listening to Time for Hemp. I am your host, Casper Leitch, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the big broadcast today. I have a very special guest I'd like to introduce to you. He is one of the founders of an organization that you may have heard of called the Drug Policy Alliance, and he's a very learned individual, and I'm very honored to have been part of some of the seminars that he has been a speaker of, and this was recorded at one of those seminars that he and I hung out together at, and I hope you find it to be enlightening and enjoyable. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ethan Nadelmann.
What has the war on drugs done to the world? Look at the murder and mayhem in Mexico, Central America, so many other parts of the planet. A global black market estimated at $300 billion a year, prisons packed in the United States and elsewhere, police and military drawn into an unwinnable war that violates basic rights, and ordinary citizens just hope they don't get caught in the crossfire. And meanwhile, more people using more drugs than ever. It's my country's history with alcohol, prohibition, and Al Capone times 50. Which is why it's particularly galling to me as an American that we've been the driving force behind this global drug war. Ask why so many countries criminalize drugs they'd never heard of, why the UN drug treaties emphasize criminalization over health, even why most of the money worldwide for dealing with drug abuse goes not to helping agencies, but those that punish. And you'll find the good old US of A. Why did we do this? Some people, especially in Latin America, think it's not really about drugs. It's just a subterfuge for advancing the realpolitik interests of the US. But by and large, that's not it. I mean, we don't want gangsters and guerrillas funded with illegal drug money terrorizing and taking over other nations. No, the fact is, America really is crazy when it comes to drugs. I mean, don't forget, we're the ones who thought that we could prohibit alcohol. So think about our global drug war not as any sort of rational policy, but as the international projection of a domestic psychosis. But here's the good news. Now it's the Russians leading the drug war, not us. Most politicians in my country want to roll back the drug war now, put fewer people behind bars, not more. And I'm proud to say, as an American, that we now lead the world in reforming marijuana policies. It's now legal for medical purposes in almost half our 50 states. Millions of people can purchase their marijuana, their medicine, in government-licensed dispensaries. And over half my fellow citizens now say it's time to legally regulate and tax marijuana more or less like alcohol. That's what Colorado and Washington are doing, and Uruguay, and others are sure to follow. So that's what I do, work to end the drug war. I think it all started growing up in a fairly religious, moral family, eldest son of a rabbi, going off to university where I smoked some marijuana, and I liked it. And I liked drinking too, but it was obvious that alcohol was really the more dangerous of the two, but my friends and I could get busted for smoking a joint. Now, that hypocrisy kept bugging me. So I wrote my PhD dissertation on international drug control. Right? I talked my way into the State Department, I got a security clearance, I interviewed hundreds of DEA and other law enforcement agents all around Europe and the Americas, and I'd ask them, what do you think the answer is? Well, in Latin America, they'd say to me, you can't really cut off the supply. The answer lies back in the US in cutting off the demand. So then I go back home and I talk to people involved in anti-drug efforts there, and they'd say, Ethan, you can't really cut off the demand. Answer lies over there, you gotta cut off the supply. Then I go and talk to the guys in customs trying to stop drugs at the borders, and they say, you're not gonna stop it here. The answer lies over there in cutting off supply and demand. And it hit me. Everybody involved in this thought the answer lay in that area about which they knew the least. So that's when I started reading everything I could about psychoactive drugs, the history, the science, the politics, all of it. And the more one read, the more it hit you how a thoughtful, enlightened, intelligent approach took you over here, whereas the politics and laws of my country was taking you over here. And that disparity struck me as this incredible intellectual and moral puzzle. There's probably never been a drug-free society. Virtually every society has ingested psychoactive substances to deal with pain, increase our energy, socialize, even commune with God. Right? Our desire to alter our consciousness may be as fundamental as our desires for food, companionship, and sex. So our true challenge is to learn how to live with drugs so they cause the least possible harm and, in some cases, the greatest possible benefit. I'll tell you something else I learned. That the reason some drugs are legal and others not has almost nothing to do with science or health or the relative risks of drugs, and almost everything to do with who uses and who is perceived to use particular drugs. You know, in the late 19th century, when most of the drugs that are now illegal were legal, the principal consumers of opiates in my country and others were middle-aged white women, using them to alleviate aches and pains when few other analgesics were available. And nobody thought about criminalizing it back then because nobody wanted to put grandma behind bars. But when hundreds of thousands of Chinese started showing up in my country, working hard on the railroads and the mines, and then kicking back in the evening, just like they had in the old country with a few puffs on that opium pipe, that's when you saw the first drug prohibition laws in California and Nevada, driven by racist fears of Chinese transforming white women into opium-addicted sex slaves. The first cocaine prohibition laws, similarly prompted by racist fears of black men sniffing that white powder and forgetting their proper place in Southern society. And the first marijuana prohibition laws, all about fears of Mexican migrants in the West and the Southwest. And what was been true in my country is true in so many others as well, with both the origins of these laws and their implementation. Put it this way, and I exaggerate only slightly. If the principal smokers of cocaine were affluent older white men and the principal consumers of Viagra were poor young black men, then smokable cocaine would be easy to get with a prescription from your doctor, and selling Viagra would get you 5 to 10 years behind bars. I used to be a professor teaching about this. Now I'm an activist, a human rights activist. And what drives me is my shame at living in an otherwise great nation that has less than 5% of the world's population, but almost 25% of the world's incarcerated population. It's the people I meet who have lost someone they love to drug-related violence or prison or overdose or AIDS because our drug policies emphasize criminalization over health. It's good people who have lost their jobs, their homes, their freedom, even their children, to the state, not because they hurt anyone, but solely because they chose to use one drug instead of another. So, is legalization the answer? On that, I'm torn. 3 days a week, I think yes. 3 days a week, I think no. And on Sundays, I'm agnostic. But since today's Tuesday, let me just say that legally regulating and taxing most of the drugs that are now criminalized would radically reduce the crime, violence, corruption, and black markets, and the problems of adulterated and unregulated drugs, and improve public safety, and allow taxpayer resources to be developed to more useful purposes. I mean, look, the markets in marijuana, cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine are global commodities markets, just like the global markets in alcohol, tobacco, coffee, sugar, and so many other things. Where there is a demand, there will be a supply. Knock out one source and another inevitably emerges. People tend to think of prohibition as the ultimate form of regulation, when in fact it represents the abdication of regulation, with criminals filling the void. which is why putting criminal laws and police front and center in trying to control a dynamic global commodities market is a recipe for disaster. And what we really need to do is to bring the underground drug markets as much as possible above ground and regulate them as intelligently as we can to minimize both the harms of drugs and the harms of prohibitionist policies. Now, with marijuana, that obviously means legally regulating and taxing it like alcohol. The benefits of doing so are enormous, the risk minimal. Will more people use marijuana? Maybe. But it's not going to be young people, because it's not going to be legalized for them, and quite frankly, they already have the best access to marijuana. Right? I think it's going to be older people. It's going to be people in their 40s and 60s and 80s, who find they prefer a little marijuana to that drink in the evening or the sleeping pill, or that it helps with their arthritis or diabetes, or maybe helps spice up a long-term marriage. And that just might be a net public health benefit. As for the other drugs, look at Portugal, where nobody goes to jail for possessing drugs, and the government's made a serious commitment to treating addiction as a health issue. Look at Switzerland, Germany, Netherlands, Denmark, England, where people who've been addicted to heroin for many years and repeatedly tried to quit and failed can get pharmaceutical heroin and helping services in medical clinics. And the results are in. Illegal drug abuse and disease and overdoses and crime and arrests all go down, health and well-being improve, taxpayers benefit, and many drug users even put their addictions behind them. Look at New Zealand, which recently enacted a law allowing certain recreational drugs to be sold legally, provided their safety had been established. Look here in Brazil and some other countries where a remarkable psychoactive substance, ayahuasca, can be legally bought and consumed, provided it's done so within a religious context. Look in Bolivia and Peru, where all sorts of products made from the coca leaf, the source of cocaine, are sold legally over the counter with no apparent harm to people's public health. I mean, don't forget, Coca-Cola had cocaine in it until 1900. And so far as we know, is no more addictive than Coca-Cola is today. Conversely, think about cigarettes. Nothing can both hook you and kill you like cigarettes. When researchers ask heroin addicts, what's the toughest drug to quit? Most say cigarettes. Yet in my country and many others, half of all the people who've ever addicted to cigarettes have quit without anyone being arrested or put in jail or sent to a quote-unquote treatment program by a prosecutor or judge. What did it were higher taxes and time and place restrictions on sale and use and effective anti-smoking campaigns. Now, could we reduce smoking even more by making it totally illegal? Probably. But just imagine the drug war nightmare that would result. So the challenges we face today are twofold. The first is the policy challenge of designing and implementing alternatives to ineffective prohibitionist policies, even as we need to get better at regulating and living with the drugs that are now legal. But the second challenge is tougher, because it's about us. The obstacles to reform lie not just out there in the power of the prison-industrial complex or other vested interests that want to keep things the way they are, but within each and every one of us. It's our fears and our lack of knowledge and imagination that stands in the way of real reform. And ultimately, I think that boils down to the kids and to every parent's desire to put our baby in a bubble and the fear that somehow drugs will pierce that bubble and put our young ones at risk. In fact, sometimes it seems like the entire war on drugs gets justified as one great big child protection act, which any young person can tell you it's not. So here's what I say to teenagers. First, don't do drugs. Second, don't do drugs. Third, if you do drugs, there's some things I want you to know, because my bottom line as your parent is come home safely at the end of the night and grow up and lead a healthy and good adulthood. That's my drug education mantra, safety first. So this is what I've dedicated my life to building an organization and a movement of people who believe we need to turn our backs on the failed prohibitions of the past and embrace new drug policies grounded in science, compassion, health, and human rights. We're people who come from across the political spectrum and every other spectrum as well. We're people who love our drugs, people who hate drugs, and people who don't give a damn about drugs. But every one of us believe that this war on drugs, this backward, heartless, disastrous war on drugs has got to end. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Ethan, congrats. Quite the reaction. That was a powerful talk. Not quite a complete standing O, though. And I'm guessing that some people here, and maybe a few watching online, I don't know, maybe someone knows a teenager or a friend or whatever who got sick, maybe died from some drug overdose. I'm sure you've had these people approach you before. What do you say to them?
Chris, the most amazing that's happened of late is that I've met a growing number of people who actually lost a sibling or a child to a drug overdose. And 10 years ago, those people just wanted to say, let's line up all the drug dealers and shoot them, and that will solve it. And what they've come to understand is that the drug war did nothing to protect their kids. If anything, it made it more likely that those kids were put at risk. And so they're now becoming part of this drug policy reform movement. There's other people who have kids, one's addicted to alcohol, the other one's addicted to cocaine or heroin, and they ask themselves the question, why does this kid get to take one step at a time and try to get better, and that one's got to deal with jail and police and criminals all the time? So everybody's understanding the drug war is not protecting anybody.
Certainly in the US, you've got political gridlock on most issues. I mean, is there any realistic chance of anything actually shifting on this issue in the next 5 years?
I tell you, it's quite remarkable. I'm getting all these calls from journalists now who are saying to me, Ethan, it seems like the only two issues advancing politically in America right now are marijuana law reform and gay marriage. What are you doing right? And then you're looking at bipartisanship breaking out with actually Republicans in the Congress and state legislatures allowing bills to be enacted with majority Democratic support. So we've gone from being sort of the third rail, the most fearful issue of American politics, to becoming one of the most successful.
Ethan, thank you so much for coming
Chris,
to Take
thanks
Global.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They slipped along through the cracks of a holiday night. Just a handful in the chamber, out of mind, out of sight. While the headlines slept silent, truth was thin as a dime. They rewrote the future in the margins of time. And slender stories lit the fear like a fuse. Big business in the shadows had too much to lose. Hemp was rising like a phoenix with $1 billion glow. So they buried the harvest where the people wouldn't know, turning good people into criminals, breaking strong families with minimal proof at all, writing bad laws like a hymn of the cynical, calling it order while the damage grows visible, turning good people into criminals. And we've all paid the price their genes. Life dreams derailed early in their late teens. A record for a moment that should never have been. A lifetime of doors slammed for a non-violent sin. But the truth keeps rising like a precision drum roll, with a chorus of the people with a rock and roll soul. We're done with the damage, we're done with the lies. It's time to bring the healing back to our lives. Turning good people into criminals, breaking strong families with minimal proof at all. Writing bad laws like a hymn of the cynical, calling it order while the damage grows visible. Turning good people into criminals. Turning good people into criminals. People into criminals. Turning good people into criminals. People into criminals.
Well, I can see by the clock on the wall that it is 4:19, and in just a minute, I'm going to be on break. I want to thank you for tuning in today. Make it a point to visit timeforhemp.news. While there, download some groovy tunes, all for free, and check out our videos. Our audio podcasts are also free to download. We got a groovy blog there where we post a couple of times a week, and we make it a point to fill the whole website with important information that you can share with the world and let everybody know how important it is to take time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they've spent. Take another look and take some time for him. Don't cut trees for paper, 'cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. When an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil, no need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, it's time for hemp. Throughout its history, hemp has been used, no mystery. Hemp was legal to pay your taxes for more than a century. Check your faxes, the founding fathers make sense to me. It's time to grow hemp legally. Think of all its uses, it's money that's well spent. Right now, no excuses, it's time for hemp. Sustainable green industry, that's our intent. A better place this world will be. It's time for hemp. Fuel and food and clothes and soap, housing, cars, yeah, car, no joke. Henry Ford built a car out of hemp. It's time for us to do it again. People be employed with balanced farming as it's meant. Right now, it's time hemp. Hemp is a true necessity for the wealth and protection of this country. Thomas Jefferson spoke those words. He knew the value of these herds. It's time to lift the hemp ban. It's time to make a strong stand.
Yes, we can.
I know we can.
Yes, we can.
We can make a difference.
Yes, we can.
Just like birds of a feather.
We can work together and lift the hemp ban.
the money that they've spent. Take another look and take some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation. Oh, yeah, it's time